I'm really honored to get to introduce my coworker, Kelsey Grover. Kelsey is a stormwater technician for the City of Wenatchee, and she has a degree in environmental studies and natural resources management from Central Washington. Kelsey, take it away.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. And this afternoon, I'm going to be discussing the City of Wenatchee's asset management applications for our illicit discharge program and our facility inspections with some records management tossed in there. So first of all, a little background about the City of Wenatchee. If you're not familiar, we have a population of about 35,000 people, and we are a phase 2 municipal stormwater permittee for Eastern Washington. So our record keeping and some of our requirements may be a little different than what some of you are used to on the west side. So a little bit about the assets we're maintaining, because it's not just stormwater for us. We have a stormwater collections utility, and we also have a parks department, a water department with a regional distribution system, a streets department, which also helps with traffic and lighting and sign maintenance, and a wastewater treatment plant. So we have a lot of utilities that we are maintaining and not necessarily a lot of staff. So all of our water utilities have about 33 full-time employees, parks with about 11, and our streets department with 12. So we don't have very large crews, but we do have a significant number of assets to maintain. So a little bit about the City of Wenatchee's asset management background. We had a committee of staff select Elements by the company Novatics in about 2016. But our implementation of this software has been very delayed due to several changes in staffing. So we got the software and then the person left, and we've had a continuous rotating door of people in that position. But Elements is a web-based GIS-centric application, and it is both compatible with mobile and desktop devices. It also has some additional ability to connect to some of our other software. So in the future, we're looking to have it connect to a utility billing software and maybe some other software to help with record keeping. We also chose the software as it had potential to collect all of our information for all of the assets we just discussed. So all of it can be kept in one central location. And over to the side is just a brief image of what it looks like actually, this is what my map would look like when I use it on a regular basis. So a little bit about our implementation timeline. Our first priority was our stormwater and sewer collections group, largely because of the requirements for record keeping for our municipal stormwater permit. And one of our main drivers of this was also our illicit discharge program. The program that we had been using previously had become obsolete and was no longer supported by our IT department, making it a really important thing for us to have a new method as our new permit requirements came into play. Also, our parks department was a high priority as they also assist in some of the maintenance for some of our stormwater utility. So some of our other departments that are currently using the software is our pre-treatment division. So our crew that are helping with inspecting our grease traps and grease interceptors throughout the city and some commercial businesses. Our water department is partially implemented, but they're working out some kinks and continuing to make progress there. We're in the process of implementing and developing workflows for our streets department and traffic and lighting. And ultimately, our end goal is that all of our departments are going to be fully using this software and able to share records amongst themselves. So also a little bit about our GIS and asset management program staff. So our staff consists of one supervisor and 1 to 2 GIS technicians and analysts whose primary responsibility is the data editing for our GIS program. We also only have 1 asset management coordinator whose responsibility is getting all of this, making all of this magic happen. We have, throughout the city, we have about 60 to 70 active people with active logins, but only 15 to 20 who are using it on a regular basis. So because we have so many assets, so much data, and so many things in the ground that we may not be able to see all the time, our field staff and a lot of our crew have the ability to make some changes to some of our attributes in GIS. So we have the ability for that to change some attributes like ownership, pipe material, things like that as they find it. That way they're taking some of the lift off of our small GIS staff. So about how Elements works and kind of the breakdown of the way we implement this process for all of our utilities and our illicit discharge program. So it's broken up in the ability to perform work on assets and non-assets. And so our assets are things that are represented like points, lines, and polygons of all of our infrastructure throughout the city. And non-assets may be things that we don't own, but we still need to pay attention to. So this comes into play as we'll jump into our illicit discharge program. So when these work orders or when these tasks are created, it starts under the umbrella of a service order. So the service order is where all of the associated tasks will eventually end up listed, and then you can go back and check what costs were, what material and labor may have looked like. Under that service order, then you have the individual tasks. So for a service order, you may have multiple tasks. You may have an inspection, a cleaning, or other maintenance. And within those tasks, we built our dynamic fields. Those are going to show all of the information that we may collect from an inspection or a cleaning. And that's where we were able to build our illicit discharge response form. So we knew what exactly we needed to collect. And in the field, we have the ability to fill out that information. And as I mentioned, we can create subsequent service order tasks to fall under the umbrella of our service order. So for example, if I wanted to inspect the catch basin that is highlighted here, which happens to conveniently be located in the convention center parking lot, I would be able to create that service order, complete the inspection, and should it need to be cleaned or maintained, I would be able to create the follow-up work order for the staff that would eventually end up with the equipment to clean it. So how do we use this for illicit discharges? We have the ability, because illicit discharges happen anywhere. They can happen to anything that's not associated with an asset. They can happen on private property and parking lots, but they still have the ability to affect our system and may require enforcement action, education and outreach, or other actions. So callouts are used. These are the red triangles. This is multiple years worth of data. So we didn't have a rash of illicit discharges happen in this location recently, but this is some history. But these are used to drop a point on the map to show where something has happened. But we also use these for things like hydro excavation. Some of our crew uses this if they need to say that they've hydro excavated something that's not associated with a specific asset. And we can also use it to notify our GIS staff if we have an error or something within the map that needs to be changed. So for illicit discharges, we use this feature as a way to drop the point to let us know that something has happened. And when we put the point on the map and we fill out some information, which we'll discuss in a moment, this also helps. It'll send an email to the appropriate staff that need to know that something has happened. So people that may be responding, if I'm the one investigating, or if I'm out of the office and something happens, this work order can be created. I will come back into the office, see that it has been created, and know if there's any follow-up action that I need to take. So we were able to build a dynamic field form, which consists of all of the questions and information that needs to be collected for the ecology report that we submit at the end of the year, in a format that's easy for us to use in the field. It's easy to use on a desktop, and all of our staff have the ability to access it if they're working in the field. So this service order is created, and we have this task, and being able to do this through the use of a point on the map has really helped in assisting with some frequent flyers, as you may call them, those who haven't quite picked up on what we're trying to get across. So how does this work, and how does this look if we are addressing a frequent flyer? So this is an example. This is something that's loosely based on a real situation. But how this would work is, for example, if we had a restaurant who was having some difficulties with a grease bin for their waste grease, we may have gotten a complaint or found during an inspection that they had an illicit discharge going over the sidewalk into the curb. We were able to go out, we put into the software that they received a verbal warning, they got it cleaned up. From that point on, the case is closed. But they didn't quite get it. So we're back out in a shorter period of time, and this time they've received a written notice, they clean it up, and once again, case closed. But we got another complaint a while later that they had a different discharge. They were building washing, so we decided that we're going to get a little education that we need to, know chemicals, make sure we're reducing our water use. But it's different, so we're not going to continue escalating enforcement action. But then we have the big event happen. So now we've built a history that we're able to see all of the different things that have happened at this particular location. And as we're building our history in our asset management program, we're starting to see that we can find where we may need to target specific education and outreach based on where we're seeing problems and if they follow a certain trend. So there are, of course, some pros and cons to doing things like this. Of course, having the email notification and being able to notify the proper staff, those who are going to be responding, those who are going to be doing enforcement action, as they are some different groups, having all the right people knowing what's going on is a really significant importance. Also being able to geographically display where things are happening. We have a lot of assets throughout our city, and knowing where a discharge has occurred can also assist us in determining what's downstream. If we have a significant spill or discharge, being able to follow that point to the nearest outfall, to the nearest structures that we may need to block off or may need to check downstream for cleaning. This software also does have the ability to export our illicit discharge records in the XML format, which is really handy for at the end of the year, being able to click a button and move forward with submitting that document with our annual report. The downside, of course, of some of these things is our email and XML formatting were built by a former city employee who no longer, like I said, former, and they're not supported by the Elements staff. So if we should have something happen in the future, we may have to reevaluate how this process goes. But in the meantime, it's working really well, and we're making a lot of progress in our asset management. Another thing that we have started using for some of our projects and our record keeping that has become really helpful is the ability to use what we call a project tool. This is able to group all of these service order tasks together by an event. So this can be a rain event, a cleanup cost, maintenance for some sort of project, but it can group all of these things together. And this is across all the different divisions. So as we have more and more of our divisions that are implemented, should we have an event or a cleanup that is requiring multi groups to participate, we are able to lump all these together to eventually end up finding total costs. So for example, last year was the first time we really got to use this. We had a 50-year rain event happen in June, and it came with some significant flooding. So you may have, if you were on our tour yesterday, or you listened to some presentations earlier where we've discussed the canyon drains that come down through the city of Wenatchee, they have a tendency to flood when we get large rain events. Because of the size of this event, we had people everywhere doing all kinds of maintenance. So we were able to create a project for the 50-year rain event cleanup. And as our staff were out in the field inspecting catch basins, cleaning catch basins, they were able to start lumping all of those into a group based on what they were doing it for. So as we move forward with some grant funded projects that we need to be keeping track of how much material we're removing, different rain event cleanups, or I think our Parks Department is also regularly using this for unhoused individuals in their cleaning up encampments, keeping track of how much labor and effort they're spending in those type of situations. So it's becoming a really useful tool for managing all of our different utilities. And as we're implementing it more, we can see how much our utilities are working together. So other inspections and reporting, as in Wenatchee, I tend to do a lot of these. We are using this for nearly all of our stormwater related inspections. So any of our BMPs, both city and privately owned, and all of the different structures associated with our stormwater program, which doing this for, at this point, we are still doing 5-year post-construction inspections. We are also able to create a report that we can nicely send to the customer who has the BMP that we are inspecting, and it's got all the criteria, and each one of the inspection forms was built for the specific type of BMP. So I like to end on a positive note. So we're going to start with the challenges first. So one of the biggest challenges that our jurisdiction has faced has been the time and implementation to full implementation. It is a lot of work, and it's a heavy lift. And obviously having a rotating staff of people in that position has made it a big challenge for us. But fortunately, we've been lucky enough to have someone in the position for just over a year, and we've made significant progress in moving forward with more division implementation. This also is a heavy lift on our GIS staff with making sure that what the assets we have mapped and in our system are correct with correct attributes and ownership. And we have a few GIS editors and a lot of data to manage. This is a screenshot of our administrator, our coordinator's map, and just all of the lists of layers that she has stacked on top of one another. So it gets very overwhelming, and we're able to customize this view for each user. But just as a glimpse of how many different things we are maintaining within our city, it's a very extensive list with a lot of data to manage. Technology and equipment can also be a bit of a struggle. A lot of our field staff struggle with internet speeds and map loading times, which is obviously a bit frustrating as you're moving and trying to keep your workflow going. Having a slow map loading is a bit of a frustration for them. But in a number of our vehicles now, we have added hotspots to help improve the internet loading speed, which I think has helped their experience significantly. And of course, I think for anyone wanting to implement this type of program, it's a change in process. We have a lot of people who are still very set in using pen and paper, and they know it works, it's trustworthy. But now that we're starting to implement this across more of our divisions, we're seeing people rely on it and trust it more because the iPad is in their hands. And just like we now ask Google for our internet direction or for our map directions, people are starting to rely on our software a lot more, which is really nice to see. So of course, there are lots of good benefits. Our record keeping and overall efficiency has increased significantly. All of our permit related records are now in one location, which makes it really nice in February, March, when we're starting to gather those annual report records. Being able to go to one location, click a couple buttons and have that report come back makes my life a lot easier. And it's building an all-in-one location for all of our asset history, costs, maintenance. So as we move forward, we're hoping to see some more trends in our asset scoring, tracking costs, just as an overall well-established asset management program. This has also really significantly helped our interdepartment communication. We are now in multiple different locations, so being able to communicate with staff that are not in the same building as you. And there are also a significant number of staff that work different hours, they work different days. So multiple Friday afternoons, you get the panicked call from a homeowner that something has happened or they need to know if something has been done on an asset in front of their home. We're now able to go into the map, click on the asset, and we can tell them the status or if there was any information that we can provide to them. So if you're sticking around for the next presentation about asset management, we'll cover this a little bit again, or Corey will cover this a little bit more again. But if you're looking at the steps to consider when you're establishing an asset management program, really create a well-established team and have all the right people in the room to make the decisions. Having a lot of voices and getting everybody's opinions, wants, and needs is really important. Not every program is going to fit into an asset management program. We do have some different divisions within our city who have chosen to be in to manage their assets separately because once this was selected, it just wasn't the right fit for them. Know your GIS data, know your assets, and know what you've got. Have a really well-established program for making those changes. And solidify your workflows. A lot of times when you get ready to get started, you think you know what you want and what you have. And once you put it into the software, you may make a 180 and decide that's not quite where you need to go. So have a good idea of where you're starting and the direction you want to go. Also understanding your users and your audience, the people that you are going to be helping with this, or if it's yourself, understand what your end goals are and what the people who are going to be using this software, what their goals are. And prioritize your efforts. So for us, obviously, stormwater was the priority to get our record keeping and our illicit discharge program, keep it functioning as we made a software and a transition or a software change. So making sure that you're phasing in the programs based on what type of record keeping you need to have and what your priorities are. And start with the programs that you know well. Don't try and take on everything all at once, and know where you're at and how you want to best prioritize the programs that have more well-defined information.